Hello, and welcome to the Josh Sweeney podcast. I am your host, Josh Sweeney, and joining us on this episode is Daniel Romanchuk. Daniel, thank you for taking the time to be here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, Daniel is the best, as of now, wheelchair racer in the world on both the track and in marathons. This last year in 2019, he won, took first in the World Majors Wheelchair Series, the Abbott World Marathon Series, and won 4 straight marathons in Chicago, New York, Boston, and London. And in New York City, he was the first American man to win, tying for the youngest winner at the age of 20. And then in Boston, he became the youngest winner to win at the age of 20 and the first American to win since 1993. He was also nominated for Best Male Athlete with a Disability at the ESPN Sports Awards. And even though he didn't win that, being nominated is enough to consider it an achievement because there's only so many that get nominated every year. And he's gone on to do some more amazing things since then, but those are kind of and he's been to the Paralympics in Rio in 2016, and we'll touch on all of that. But I guess, Dan, after hearing all of that and the stuff that you've accomplished, how does that, what are you thinking?
Um, Ooh.
Kind of just like a, did that really all happen kind of feeling, or is this kind of it just, I don't want to say it hasn't hit yet, but
a little bit, I really just, as much as I can, I try not to focus on really titles or anything like that. I just go into a race like I pretty much go into any race. I pretty much just go in the same way, no matter where it is. Whether we just did the same exact course yesterday, it can turn out entirely different. And so I try not to really pay too much attention to what I'm going in as, a defending champion or anything like that.
For sure. And I think that's probably one of the reasons you've been so successful. And I know, having known you, you're not someone that rolls around like you are the man, literally, if nobody knew who you were or what you had done, nobody would know because of your, just the way you are. You're just a nice guy that would talk to anybody and is willing to help anyone. And I think that's amazing. I think that's awesome. And I also think it's great that you don't focus on those titles and those things, because I think you have a long, amazing career ahead of you if you wanted to do that. And focusing on the past doesn't do anything other than, just fun for guys like me to talk about on the radio.
I, really, it all comes down to, in a sense, just how I was raised. I mean, just the family and the support that I've had. I certainly would not be in the position that I am without them.
For sure. I know personally myself, I've always felt the same way. And I think that's actually a good way to start this episode, with your disability that kind of has you racing in a wheelchair instead of running on foot. What is your disability, and how did it all unfold for you? Because it happened right from the beginning of your life, correct?
Yep. So I was born with spina bifida, and so I at first, I think around the first 5 years or so of my life, I had used a set of braces to help me walk that basically went all the way up to basically my arms. But around 5 years old or something like that, I decided that, this is far too slow and tiring, really, to use, because by the time I would get from, say, the car to a store entrance or anything like that, or if we were going to the library, whatever, wherever we were going, by the time I would hit the entrance, I would already be so tired, just from going, getting to that point,
Yeah.
that it was just it wasn't, the best option. And so that's probably when I transferred into just using a day chair, as my main method of transportation. And so,
Well, I guess when you
yep.
were younger, when you were like, I could have swore I read somewhere that your mom had to make some sort of decision when, like, shortly after you'd been born or something like that, to do some kind of operation. Is that correct, or am I just making that up?
So with spina bifida, basically the spinal cord is, the spinal column doesn't fully form, it doesn't fully close, and so my spinal cord was left outside, and so it got damaged, and so basically as soon as I was born, I had had operation to sort of close that up, and I'm sure many others, but that I think that might be probably what it was. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that might be it.
I've had many.
Right. I'm sure. I mean, yeah, I'm sure. And I remember reading with that, or I guess not reading with it, but thinking while I was reading that was like, man, when you think about children that are born with a disability, you always think about the child. You never really think about the parent initially. At least I still kind of don't. But then when you realize, like, oh, the parent has to make these decisions for how the surgery goes. And now that I have kids, it's a little more, the parent for how I think. But having met your mom and kind of going back to what you said about your family and how you were raised, I can totally see where she would be, because she's very positive, right? And she's totally, I feel like, one of those people that's like, what's going to help my son be the best son or individual that he can be. And I just thought that was really, really cool. And I think that's something that is awesome, that you have that kind of support system, because I think it's great for what you're doing and helps you to get to where you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you have any siblings?
Yep. So I have a brother and a sister. Both are older, and so my brother, he is a PTA, a physical therapy assistant, and then my sister is a nurse,
Nice.
and so they're both married, and so yep.
That's cool. No, that's awesome. And so what was that? Where are you from?
I am originally from about half an hour outside of Baltimore, Maryland, in a town called Mount Airy, Maryland. And so I grew up there. About when I was around 2 years old, I started to go to a sports program in Baltimore, Maryland, called the Bennet Blazers Physically Challenged Sports Program.
Okay.
So I started going there when I was 2.
Wow.
I started. I think I was swimming by the time I was 3. I started racing when I was 4. I've done pretty much every other sport imaginable: basketball, hockey, swimming, archery. You name it, they had it, and I tried it.
Yeah, and actually that reminds me of what. So do you remember? I don't really remember this. I just remember I went to a developmental team camp. It might have been my first one I went to in 2011. That maybe you were you? Did you go to the sled hockey development camp in 2011?
I don't know the exact year it was, but I believe you were there. Yes.
As a player, though, right? Or was
Yeah,
I
I was
coaching?
there as one of the just an athlete. Yep.
No, but I mean, do you remember if I was or not? I remember you later. I remember being, one of the coaches at the camp, and I remember seeing you, but I couldn't remember if we met before then or not.
I think that was probably the first time I met you.
Okay. Well, anyway, I want to set the record straight here. When I met Daniel for the first time and saw him, or at least the first time I remember as a coach at the developmental team camp, I remember thinking, this guy's arms are so long. If we get him in the right sled and we get him playing, he's going to be unreal. And obviously, you decided wheelchair racing was the better way to go, and I think that's right for you. But I will say also that I remember thinking, kind of, no matter what you wanted to do or just the kind of person that you were going to be good at it, because you seemed like you were not one of those super aggressive, like, I'm going to go do really good at this. It was more of a methodical, I'm getting into this, I'm learning, and I'm ready to accept what I need to be able to improve and do what I do well. And I don't remember how much of an impact, or I mean not an impact, but how much of a close relationship we had, whether I was your coach or not. But I just remember watching and thinking, this guy's going to go somewhere. So now that you're here and you're doing some really cool things, I knew it.
And really, I just thank God for the opportunities that I've had, to just play sports and to go to do what it is, what I've done. I thank him for the opportunities, and like I've already mentioned, my family and friends and sponsors. I mean, I wouldn't be here without them.
Definitely. And so as you're playing all these sports, I mean, you're just, like you said, you did everything. When was the transition into, I guess, focusing more towards using the racing wheelchair? And then had you considered hockey a little more seriously, or some of the other sports, maybe wheelchair basketball a little more seriously?
So it was probably it was the winter of 2014 to 15 that my mom asked me one day if I wanted to try to make the Rio 2016 Paralympics.
Yeah.
And after giving it some thought, I had decided that I wanted to try and make it. And at that point, I was I was pretty much on my own for track, and we knew that if in any given sport, of any given sport that I was playing at the time, I had the most, the best chances in track. And so we got in contact with the high performance director of track and field at the time, and they put us in contact with Adam Bleakney, the head coach out in the University of Illinois. And so Adam let me come out and train. And so I've been out here for around 2015. 5 years.
Yeah. So you didn't do any like training at home before that in the racing chair, or you did, but it was just kind of sporadic?
So I did. So I started when I was 4 years old with track, and so I started with that. Then I had gone to the youth competitions and things like that. But I kind of got to a point where in order to kind of progress, I needed to practice more than, the team met pretty much on the weekends.
Yeah.
And so I needed to do just a little bit more in order to progress. And so at that time, my mom was pretty much taking me out to, a 150, 200 meter cul-de-sac with a slight hill. And, I just do repeats on that. Slowly going out more on the road, and really just sort of individually training. There wasn't too much of a group to train with, and that was really kind of why I needed a better just training group, and somebody who really knew track, track training, in order to hopefully make the games.
Yeah. So it kind of just came down to, I feel like most people that are very successful in a sport are usually multi-sport athletes. And I don't think that's just a coincidence. But what you're saying is you kind of got to that point where it was, hey, you can have fun in all of these, but if you really want to do something amazing and go to the Paralympics, you kind of need to pick something.
Yeah, and I still did, actually, pretty much all of the other sports as well. We just sort of, if there was if two events ended up on the same day, I would always go to the track event. And so I tried to do as much as I could still back, with all the other sports. But track kind of took my primary spot, you could say.
Yeah. And so when you were looking at 2016, were you focusing at all, or I guess the build up to that, were you doing any marathons? Because I thought I also saw that your first time ever doing a marathon was in 2012. Is that right?
Ooh, I believe so. Yes.
It was in Baltimore.
That was Baltimore Marathon. Yep.
And how was your first marathon experience? I have to ask this for personal reasons because after doing my first marathon, well, you were there in Chicago. You probably were you probably were back in your hotel room having breakfast by the time I finished. But what was that like finishing or doing your first marathon?
Honestly, that was just make it to the finish line and see how it goes.
Oh, cool. So then I was in the same boat. Yeah.
Not too much of a goal other than that. Really, just to kind of get to the finish line, see how everything goes, see if I like it. So it just I had never done that kind of a distance before, and just wanted to kind of experiment.
Yeah, and I think that's good that you did because you've obviously become very successful with that. But with going into 2016, did you focus mainly on track at that point?
Yes. So heading into the games, I was primarily track. Yes. Yep. I did some road stuff as well, but we definitely put more emphasis on track.
And what distances? I mean, did you do all the distances? And I'm kind of ignorant in this, and that I don't know the different distances, and I'm sure people listening to this won't know either. So can you kind of explain, I guess, track wheelchair racing in a nutshell?
Yep. So I ended up making the Rio team for the 100 through the 5,000. So the 100 meter, 400 meter, 800 meter, 1,500 meter, and 5,000. And so I did all of those events when I was there. I didn't quite meet the qualification standard for the marathon, but I ended up doing everything on the track. And really, Rio was kind of just a go and get the experience of the games. Go through team processing, go to opening ceremonies, go through the call tent, and line up on the start line with all of these other racers in the stadium, and just do that as many times as I could, so that really nothing would be new in 2020.
It's kind of funny to think about that you're going to the Paralympics to get used to racing at that level. I mean, I understand that and I totally get with you, but like you're at the Paralympics. You're at the pinnacle of the sport and you're there talking about, yeah, I'm going there to get used to this and I'm going there to, which is it kind of goes back to the mindset that you have of doesn't matter where you're at or what you're doing. It's all training and it all goes towards becoming the best, wheelchair racer that you want to be. So I guess with that aside, and now that we know that, feelings, experience, and just What was it like to go to the Paralympics for your first time?
Just all around an amazing time. Going through team processing and getting two, you know, two bags that I can practically fit inside of, just full of clothes. um, and then just the international travel, just going and living in the village, and opening ceremonies was incredible. Um, you know, I had an amazing time. And, it certainly was, I was, go there and, do the best that I could. But at that time, we kind of knew where I was, and I wasn't really expecting to final or to medal or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a difficult sport, and I have a lot more respect for it after doing. I mean, the first time I got on a track, I remember watching it before, and I remember thinking, it doesn't look too bad. And then the first time I got on a track in a race chair, I was like, wow, this is really hard. And then after doing the marathon, I was like, all right, I have a whole new level of respect for these wheelchair racers because you guys make it look so easy. And especially you, I think maybe because of it probably has a lot to do with the fact that you've been in a chair for so long, and or I guess you've started in a chair since you were a kid, and just like anything else, the longer you've been doing it, the more you can tweak your chair. And I mean, how many racing wheelchairs have you gone through?
Ooh, that's hard to say.
Like,
Usually I get a new one pretty much every year at this point. I say I probably have done that since somewhere around 2013 or so.
I'm jealous.
Um,
That's really cool. And you're working with Topend, who is for those listening that don't know, Topend is out of Florida. They are a manufacturing company that does adaptive sports chairs, wheelchair, the racing wheelchair, basketball chairs, hand cycles, some other stuff. But you're working with them, or I guess worked with them on developing their new NRG model, which is all carbon fiber, right?
so yeah, I've been working with them since um, I think it was the around 2018. I got one of their chairs a week before Boston 2018, I think. And great chairs. They roll very well. I certainly had to get used to the carbon fiber part of it. And so it is a hybrid chair, so it's not a straight aluminum or a straight carbon fiber chair. It's actually kind of a mix of both. The sort of the main beam of the chair is carbon fiber,
Okay.
but the bucket, the part that you sit in, is aluminum. And so just kind of it reacted a lot in a different way than I was expecting it to. Because I was just always used to an aluminum chair, and I could always get the response that I wanted out of the aluminum chair. But when I tried to get the same response out of the carbon fiber chair, I was like, I got a completely different result. And so, kind of to figure that out, it took a while.
Yeah, and then in 2018, I guess that what did you set? You set a new world record in the 5,000 meter on the track at Swiss Nationals, and then a new world record in Phoenix during the 800 meter. Was that with the new chair, or was that with the old chair?
Those were the new chair.
So it works. That's awesome.
Yep.
That's cool. And then, so sorry, we're going back to the Paralympics, and I guess looking back on it, did you get what you felt like you needed out of Rio in 2016?
I think so. Yeah. Yep.
And I guess what has, or I guess what did you learn? Because I mean, I learned a lot going through in 2014. But I mean, what was the one main thing that you got out of 2016?
Who? Um.
I know I'm throwing them at you here.
I think I came out with a few different things. Um, one of which is just kind of the same with hockey. You know, a a track is a track. It's the same 400 meters no matter where you are, and kind of like with hockey. I'm sure the rinks are the same thing no matter where you are.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and so just kind of I may be halfway across the world, but it's it's a 400 meter. you know I know how to do it in practice. It's just do the same thing. So that, let's see, who just travel and how to kind of deal with a lot of that.
Yeah.
Nutrition while you're away. There's just so much.
Yeah, there is a lot. And I mean, you'd kind of been doing it for a little while, but still going to the Paralympics is a different experience. Now, after Rio, I mean, for the people listening, like, so you didn't medal, you didn't even meet the qualification for the marathon at Rio in 2016, right?
Yep.
So you got to think about that. In 2016, he didn't medal in any of the track events. And then he didn't even meet the qualification for the marathon. It's 2019 and he's winning everything. So it doesn't mean, it's the end of the world if you go to something amazing and do a good enough job to be there. There's still things you can learn from that. And I think that's great to hear from someone like yourself that's now crushing it. And when you were preparing for this, this, I guess the next 4 years was what you were preparing for after 2016. What was some of your goals when you were kind of looking towards the future?
I really kind of took my goals kind of sort of on an as they came basis. I always like to keep my goals within my own capabilities, and so I would never go into a race saying, "Oh, it's my goal to win this race" or anything like that.
Yeah.
It would always be, I want to work on efficiency, keeping my stroke efficient, or I want to concentrate on consistently hydrating myself throughout this race, or always something that I had under my control.
Nice. Another great point. Focusing on the things that you can't control, not the things you can't control. I'm sure we'll hear that time and time again from athletes that have done amazing things. And so then you came in 2017, you came within a second of the 10,000 meter world record. 2018, you set all these amazing records. And then you also placed third in the London Marathon and you won the Chicago Marathon. Were you starting to feel like, all right, I think I'm getting this. Like I'm starting to feel like I'm coming up in this sport?
I kind of, I think back in sort of, I think it was Chicago. We had kind of known that I could win a marathon. It's kind of just a matter of everything sort of coming together, and that's, I think, probably when stuff really just started to all come together between just equipment and training, just a number of other variables, just being able to just sort of having them just fall into place, so to say.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what really was kind of going on then.
And you had been going, so you had already been at University of Illinois in Champaign for 4 years at this, or about 4 years at this point. And you're going to school there at the same time as you're training there, right? Or no?
Yep.
Okay. I didn't know
So,
how that worked.
yep. I'm taking mostly online classes with the community college nearby. So I'm not at the university itself, but I'm hoping to transfer in. When exactly, I'm not sure. Just with all the things that have happened in the past, you know, few years, it's kind of plans have changed, and that's one of the things that I've learned in sports in general is just stay flexible. Um, you may make a plan, but somewhere down the road it can fall completely apart, and so just kind of be ready to adapt.
Yeah, that's life for you. And so that's really cool that they allow you to train there with Adam Bleakney and the other amazing individuals that you compete against, but then also train with, and and then go to your community college on the side. So what did, at that point in time, around between 2016 and 2019, what was your average schedule of training and I guess life?
For the most part, it's wake up sometime around 6, get breakfast before practice at 8. Usually every morning practice is at 8. Practice might last an hour, hour and a half, depending on whether we have another one that day or not. So after practice is done, always get in, a recovery drink. My go-to is usually milk, and so get some recovery in, and then again, kind of depending on the time of year, head off to classes, whether I'm taking them in person or online. Get all the homework done. Anything that way. And then sometimes another practice at 3 in the afternoon. And really, it's a matter of just balancing practice with school, and now there's a lot more to kind of balance.
Yeah. And when you were going to practices, I mean, I'm sure, I don't want to blanket statement this, but is it a lot of just putting the work in, or is it a lot of technique and making sure you're doing it right every single time for, like you said, efficiency purposes, or, lessons, or, what's kind of average training stuff look like?
It really, it can kind of be a lot, really. I've been doing this for I guess 17 years, and I'm still learning a number of things, and especially with technology changing and equipment changing, having good equipment, maintaining it, having the right coaches and having a group to train with has really been just amazing. It's a whole different training environment when you're out pushing with a group as compared to just pushing out on your own.
Yeah.
there's nutrition, and then it's there's a lot that goes into it, and kind of just remembering back to the years when I was starting just starting in the sport, and being afraid to pump up my tires because something might happen to that valve, and I might, if I can't fix it, I'll have no air in my tires, and just having that sort of fear of, well, the 60 pounds that I have in it right now is better than none, so I'm not going to touch it. And just kind of remembering back to those years, I've always, something that I'm looking forward to doing is actually making a video series on equipment maintenance, and just sort of how does the racing chair work, and all of just maintaining it properly. And so I'm actually starting my first shoot of that tomorrow.
Is that going to be on YouTube, or do you have a website of that, or where do people find that, or where can they find it when it's up?
Well, that's kind of not sure at the moment. We're kind of figuring a few of those things out right now.
Yeah, I totally understand. It's technology world is huge, and whenever you do figure that out, I'll be looking out for it, so I can put that up and share that on all my stuff. I guess I don't want to take too much away from your video series and whatnot, but for people listening to this that I guess the first question I'm thinking of is what's the best way to get into the sport if you are interested in doing, track or marathon wheelchair racing?
So probably the best way for anyone to get involved in really any sport would probably be to just look online for a local sports program.
Yeah, that's true. And so you said you went through the Bennet Blazers. That's right, right?
Yep.
And I know that that's one of the ways that I got into adaptive sports, and found more individuals within the community to help me out. And I mentioned a website that Andrew Kirka made during that episode 1. So, and he has outlined different things about different sports. And so that's a good resource. And as far as the chair goes, fitting in the chair with wheelchair racing and learning the technique, and are you planning on doing any techniques type videos, or like the way, like positioning? Because as of now, when I was trying to learn, I could only find like 2 solid videos to go off of.
So that we're kind of, again, sort of outlining what do we want the series to cover. We're hoping to cover as much as we can.
Awesome. Yeah, that's something that I'm sure people would want to know. And then I did have a question from social media, and it was how to build endurance and power in a racing wheelchair.
Ooh.
Get muscle. No, I'm just kidding.
I would say I'm gonna have to go with just listen to your coaches. Tell them that that's something you want to work on and to build, and just listen to what they have for you to do.
Yeah, I'm sure it is very specific for each individual. I know I've seen some videos on, I want to say it was Instagram, I don't even remember, but it was all of you guys lined up at the University of Illinois, and you're doing your training on the trainers with the iPads or whatever that is in front of you. And it's funny. I started laughing when I watched the video, because you see everyone else is, they all have their different way that they're pushing and their different stuff that they're doing. And like, there's Aaron, who's got his, Aaron Pike, he's got his stroke that looks like really kind of strong and hard and fast. And then yours, watching you just have like this real quick snap with your long arms that just turns that wheel over so fast, and then you're chilling. I don't know if you guys were doing different workouts or what, but I was amazed at just all the different variations. So I think that's probably a good answer, is just listen to what your coach has to say. Find a coach, and yeah.
Yep, and really, the whole this sport really is technique driven. Um, and I know athletes that are, I think, in their 60s and still can probably end up in the top 10 on pretty much any given marathon.
That's crazy. 60. Yeah, and actually, now that you mentioned that, it when I got into paratriathlon and then went to the Chicago Marathon, I was amazed because being, I don't know, not very smart in the sport, I thought I'm like one of the youngest guys. I'm going to do great because I'm young. And then I go out there and I get my butt kicked by these guys that are 10 years older than me and they don't look very big, but they have just their technique and their form and their efficiency. And like you said, like diet, staying hydrated, all that stuff comes into play. And, they just crushed me. And I was like, it was a total eye-opening moment of, oh, so it doesn't matter how young you are in this sport. You can really get somewhere even if you're older. And so I guess moving on from that, in 2019, when you win these 4 straight marathons, I guess when you're going into them, and like you said, diet, nutrition, everything that, and I mean, I don't want you to give away any secrets, even though I don't really think you have any, but what kind of stuff were you thinking that you needed to do, or how did you prepare, like mentally and then physically, and with all of your stuff, how did you prepare for those 4 wins?
So it kind of depends on the race. But in general, when the sort of the marathon seasons come around, sort of the spring and fall, we try and put on a few more miles than we would typically do in the summer. Because the summer is more track training. It's a lot of speed, high speed, not too much distance. But when we start going into the marathon seasons, we try and get on a few more miles, just to get that sort of base of endurance up a little bit.
Yeah.
And then something I always try and do is when heading into certain races is to go to geographically sort of simulate that area. And so if I'm going to New York or something like that, New York or Boston are quite hilly marathons. And so something I'll usually do before those is go back to my home on Erie, Maryland, and as the name implies, it's quite hilly.
Yeah.
And so I like to get some climbing in before those marathons. And so it kind of depends on which one you're heading into a bit.
In Chicago, it had, I mean, I felt like there were hills. You probably didn't think like there were. But going over some of those bridges, I remember thinking, wow, I'm having to do a little work here. When you're doing the hilly marathons, are you strategic in how you race? And I don't mean that like, obviously if there's guys front to back or whatever, you're going to try to stay with them there's no point in gassing yourself for the first half of the marathon if you can just wait and hold on to it, I'm sure. But I'll let you answer the question. So when you're racing in these hilly marathons, is there like a strategic way you race it, or do you just go?
Really, hilly or not, there really is a lot of strategy going into pretty much every race. And so before almost any race, whether it's a marathon or not, I like to tour the course. And so if we can drive there, that's what we kind of prefer to do. So we have our car there, and we can just go out and take a course map and just drive the course. to see what the geographical features are, where uphills are, downhills, how sharp turns are, if there are any road conditions that I need to watch out for. And so, I always like to go and do that to just get a little bit more solid, just knowledge of the course. And then something I usually do the night before a race is I call either my coaches or mentors and kind of ask them what my race should be, race strategy should be going into this race. Kind of telling them who's there, what the course is like, and just sort of giving them that same course preview that I just did. And so we kind of come up with a little bit of a plan. And again, knowing that it very well could fall apart, and I'll just have to adapt. But, I always like to go in with a plan.
And do you, with that plan, as you're going through, like, do you try to stay with the pack as much as you can to utilize them? I mean, I'm just thinking more on the cycling side because that's what I just know a little more of. I mean, when I did the Chicago Marathon, it was just me for like 2 hours, so I didn't feel any strategy. But with hand cycling, you want to try to stay with the guys as long as you can, and then try to get a break or get in front of them to try to conserve energy. And and even drafting, I mean, do you guys draft off each other in wheelchair racing, and what speeds are you usually holding?
So yeah, we do certainly do draft, and it all depends on kind of the leader of the pack and what they're doing at the time. But we'll be going on a flat anywhere from 20 is somewhere in the low 20s is probably what we'll do up to on a flat. Of course, downhills, we can get going quite fast.
What's the fastest you've gone?
Ooh, probably somewhere in the 40s, I think I've seen.
That's crazy.
So
that's insane. And so for people listening, to say that he's going 40 miles an hour, if you look up a picture of these, it's got two wheels in the back. You're sitting, and it's just it's kind of the way the frame's built. There's the long piece that extends out to the front with a smaller wheel attached in the front. The brakes that you have are either taking your gloves and basically pushing them against the hand rim as hard as you can, or using the brake that's provided, and it's attached to the small front wheel in the front. So when he's hitting 40 miles an hour, I mean, if something was to run in front of the road, like, it wouldn't be good. So that's just having done that, think about that. And I wanted to just make sure that the listeners understood that that's scary.
Yep. No sudden movements. And so, yep, just kind of get to know I've gotten to kind of know my chair going on, certain downhills and what it can handle. And so really knowing what your chair can handle is kind of a big part of racing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then with these races, I mean, I've got to say, I'm really excited to see you winning because of your attitude and the way that you are, and how you're just a nice overall guy, and you're always willing to help. Because I've met some of them, and I'm not, this is all on me. I'm not, I don't want but I feel like some of them, they're kind of diva-ish, and, they like to have their things the way they are. And I remember overhearing one guy saying something about, when we were at the Chicago Marathon, saying something about, being upset that he couldn't warm up inside the building we were in, and he didn't want to have to warm up outside because it was cold. And I've never heard you complain about that. So seeing you win, I'm just like, yes. And, USA, go USA. But with those wins, you already secured your spot for the 2020 Paralympics, which is really cool. And then how does that work for, because you just got back from some big event over in what, Abu Dhabi? Or is that right?
So the November was quite a busy month. So I had the New York Marathon in early that month. I went from there. So marathon Sunday. I left Monday night for Dubai for the World Championships for track and field. And so I spent, I think it was probably around a week or so there. And then right from there, I went to Oita, Japan for another marathon. And so it was a marathon. Then in Dubai, I did 3 events, the 800, 1500, and 5000.
Uh,
And then heading over to Japan for another marathon.
and how did you do in the three? I don't have that information in front of me. How did you do during in those?
In Dubai, I got um, first in the 800, and then I think fourth and fifth or something around those for the 15 and 5000.
Okay. Nice. Not bad. And so when it says that, you're already set for the 2020 Paralympics, like when people say that, is that only for the marathon or is that for track, or do you put in what you want to compete in, or does it go off of what you have qualified for at other races?
So at the moment, so I am doing the marathon at the games. Our track trials will be in, I believe, June, and so those are a little bit, kind of right before the games, when everyone will figure out what track events they'll be able to do, and it's kind of nice for our Adam to kind of know who's doing kind of what events and who's going kind of a little bit earlier than then, just with sort of training methods and getting a peak performance. Sometimes getting a peak performance at trials and then at the games can sometimes be a little bit tricky, I think,
Yeah.
just with the time period that he has to play with. So it's kind of a really nice thing to be able to kind of you know be able to sort of have that cemented.
Yeah, to be able to prepare, and that's so cool coming from 2016 where you didn't qualify for the marathon to now 2020, very far in advance that you are going to race in the marathons. That's really cool. Uh,
It's been an incredible few years.
yeah, I'd say so. And I think, this is something I wasn't sure if I wanted to touch on because nobody really likes talking about money. And I'm not going to ask you to disclose all the information. But the Abbott World Marathon Series, and we had kind of talked about this a little bit in Chicago, and I think it's something that should be discussed because Paralympic sports, and Olympic sports, it's usually a sport done for personal reasons. You don't make a lot of money. It's not like you say, I want to go to the Olympics or Paralympics because I want to make a lot of money. That's just not how this works. And so I remember you explaining to me how the World Marathon Series works, and you don't have to give me, down to the cent. But I think it's really cool that you are able to do this sport and then be able to, after a season, buy a home and focus on the next season and not have to worry so much about worrying about bills and the things that, because money is huge. If you don't have money and you're trying to train and work and do all these things, you might not be where you're at today. So can you just give us a run through with the wheelchair sports, the Abbott World Marathon Series, financially? Like how does the payoff look for winning these races?
So in the past, it's kind of been sort of really really difficult to just do wheelchair track. Um, and in recent years, I've seen a lot of changes happening from for just equality in across the sports with disability and equal pay. So at the Peachtree Road Race down in Georgia, they set equal pay for the course record being broken, across both both men, women, and able body and wheelchair. And so between that, the USOC changing its name to the USOPC, to including Paralympic in its name. There's so many other things have been happening recently. It's just I'm seeing a lot of great changes. And now you really are you are able to kind of support yourself a little bit with sort of the with sort of just doing wheelchair track. And this I know I've said this already, but I'm just thankful to all the the people that have kind of come before me to sort of pave the way and just to make the sport what it has become today.
Yeah, even in the sled hockey community with, USA Hockey, the guys that play on the sled hockey team are able to focus more on training and playing on that team and continue playing for gold medals, because the pay has been made to the point where when you're playing, you can, you don't have to worry so much about finding the perfect job that allows you to travel and do everything else. And because you're getting supplemented through USA Hockey for being on that team.
Yep.
So is each marathon different, or does Abbott have a set prize money amount? Like, isn't it, what is it, like $10,000 or something like that?
So it kind of varies per marathon.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, every marathon sets their own sort of price for their the different places. And then the Abbott series is basically, it's just a set of races where your place is sort of scored in each race. So there's sort of there's a set amount of points for getting first, second, third, and so on. And so basically within a series, which actually it starts at one race and ends at the same race. And so this series started in Chicago and will end with Chicago again this year. And so you basically your places, you get so many points based on what you placed in all of the marathons, and basically the highest score kind of wins. And again, sort of the Abbott who puts on the series has kind of put a certain amount for first, second, third, and so on.
And what is that Peachtree amount that they just decided to match to make things fair? Do you know?
Peachtree was 50 for breaking the course record.
$50,000.
Yep.
That's really cool. That's awesome. And I think that's great because you guys are, breaking world records is not an easy thing to do, and you have to put a lot into it. And I think it's really cool that they're making things equal and understanding that it takes the same level of commitment, no matter, if you're disabled or not, to be able to do those things. And that's just really cool. So you were able with the season and everything else and all the good luck to buy a house. You move, so you're permanently moved down into, like, you have a home, so you're there in Champaign, Illinois, correct?
Yep.
And you're what does your future plans look like? I mean, you already know you're going to 2020, so that means that you're going to be deep in training no matter what. But outside of that, what does Dan like to do?
uh, well, outside of I really do I enjoy the sport, and so training and competing and all of that. I plan on continuing to do that. Pretty much until I can't.
Yeah.
Um, at the moment. Um, but uh, competing, eventually getting my degree, um, and,
What are you going
and
for a
more in the
degree
near
in?
uh, something engineering. Not exactly sure what, but something in that sort of area.
Oh, okay, cool.
Uh, and so, sort of in the near future, I'll be concentrating on just making videos for the series, sort of the racing wheelchair equipment video series I mentioned, and spring is going to be pretty busy with just different races. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, I know it's one of those questions where even myself, when I was deep in training for the Paralympics, and people were like, "What do you like to do?" and I'm like, "Train? I don't know. That's all I'm doing right now." But
Yeah, I mean, in spare time, I like to, um, I enjoy going outside to different, parks or whatever that are around the area, and also get online on Xbox with my dad, and so he has one because he is still out in Maryland, and so we both have Xboxes, and so we'll sometimes get on and play together. Uh, so
that's really cool.
yep.
And I guess, what is it like now? Has anything changed with your focus and having a house? And I mean, I think I saw an article about you were redoing the floors. And I mean, are you, um, I guess big picture, now that this is going to be your second Paralympics, are you thinking less about, oh, I'm going to the Paralympic game, this is huge, and kind of able to breathe it in a little more?
It's uh, kind of. I haven't really thought about that. Um, it really
You're
just
welcome.
it's been a busy year. Closing on the house between Boston and London. So in April, I believe, and then you know, kind of like you mentioned. Yep, it was about half carpet, and so I've taken the carpet out and put in hardwood. Got new windows. I'm planning to do a bit with the backyard, just some plants and other stuff, and then just learning how to kind of run a house.
Yeah, and I think
uh,
I read also that you were looking to have the floors done initially, and then you were like, "Wait, they want how much?" And then it turned into, "I can do it."
yep. So it was about probably 2 or so week project, I think, between 3+ people working on it, uh, both of my parents and myself, uh, um, being out here and just kind of cutting the pieces. That's kind of my dad's specialty, was any cuts that needed to happen. He would usually take care of that, and then I'd just be laying down as many boards as I could. Um, and so, yep, it's all done.
Yeah. That's cool. And I mean, I just bring that up because I feel like a lot of times people, well, at least maybe not a lot of times, but I've met people before that were like, "Oh, I can't do that," and I just think that's funny because I'm like, "Well, why can't you do that? You do all this other stuff, this and that. Like, what's stopping you?" And I wanted to share that if a guy that's winning, marathons can do floors in his house, then you could probably figure it out how to do anything and not focus on, just I guess your disability and what it is that you're used to, getting out of that comfort zone of, well, this is what I know and this is what I'm good at and this is what I'm doing and kind of switching that into, well, I'm going to learn how to do something new and that's okay. And so I just think that's really cool.
Yeah, I think kind of sports has kind of really sort of helped with that. I mean, the youth sports program that I was with, their motto is to teach kids they can before they're told they can't.
Nice.
And so, just growing up sort of with that mentality of okay, I have this goal in mind. How am I going to achieve it? And just sticking with it. As just kind of who
Just a way of life.
I'm glad to have had just the upbringing that I have, and just kind of like I said, the support that has just helped me kind of be able to do that and kind of just learn. Okay, this may not look simple or whatever, but how am I going to get it done?
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. And I think that you're going to be doing great things. I'm excited to watch you. Is there anything else for anyone that, I mean, because you're kind of a big deal, is there anyone else or anything else that you think you might want to say to anyone hearing this and maybe thinking about getting into the wheelchair racing scene or just in general?
Ooh, listen to your coaches. Don't do more than they tell you. Don't do less. You know, don't take shortcuts. It's a long process, but you know, it's worth it in the end.
Perfect. Well, Daniel, thank you again for taking the time to be here, and to all of you
Thank you.
yeah, and to all of you that took the time to listen today, we thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to the Josh Sweeney podcast so you don't have to worry about missing the next one. Until next time.